In this tutorial, we are going to see step by step how you can build a login, sign up, and reset password page all in the same element using URL parameters into Bubble. So let's get started. Before we start, I just wanted to let you know that you can find this type of pre-made login pages into Nocodable Components UI library. This is the most complete UI library for Bubble with a bit more than 350 fully responsive components. So in this tutorial, we are going to see how you can do it step by step, but if you want to save some time and not do it all by yourself, you will find a link to it in the description. Alright, so let's get started. Before diving into Bubble, we are going to take a few minutes to really analyze the Figma mockup we have here. So basically, the idea is to understand how it will work responsively. Pretty simple. Basically, we are going to mask the right part when the screen will become too narrow. So nothing too fancy here. So as we can see, we have two main groups, the left one and the right one. The only trick that there is that into the left group, we are going to have several groups, which will be the login group, the sign up group, and the reset password group, which will hold different inputs depending on what we want to show. So that's basically it. So we'll have three groups we need to do into this element, and then based on the current mode selected by the user, so login, sign up, or reset password, we will display the corresponding group. So into Bubble, the first thing we can do, of course, is to create a new page. So I'm going to hit new web page. I'm going to call it login. And I'm going to do completely from scratch so that you can see that you can do it step by step. So first and foremost, we need to set a container layout on the page itself, because if we don't and if we leave it set to fixed, the page will not be responsive. So let's set it to colon. And now what I want to do is to have a first group that will act as the page wrapper, so that will contain all our elements. So this group will take the full page. So we'll set it to fit height to content and we'll rename it page wrapper. This is this group that will more or less act as the main container for our group left and our group right. So since the group left and right are set next to each other horizontally, we are going to select a row so that they are on the left and on the right. And now I can add my first group, which will be group left, and I can duplicate it. So I'm going to say copy, and I'm going to paste it in my page wrapper. And now I have my group right. There we go. Nice. And then I can set a background color on my group right using some color variable I have here in my app. So let's say primary 500, and that's not too bad. So I'm going to uncheck fit height to content for now, or at least I'm going to set them to expand vertically, so that they can take the full page height. So that's a detail, but that's a good detail for now, and maybe later we will change it to fit height to content depending on what we want to display. Alright, so that was the first part. Now that we have the main structure of our page, we can move on and actually import the elements in Bubble. We are going to do this by hand, obviously. What we are going to do is start with the left group, which will basically be three different groups, as we were saying earlier. So the login, the sign up, and the reset password. So we are going to do this one time, then we will duplicate it and simply remove or add the necessary inputs. So we'll start with the login one, and then we move on to the sign up. So let's start with the top of the group. So in my group left, I'm going to add another group, which we will call group login, for example. We can see that this group is centered because my group left has a container element centered. So the element inside the container will be centered. So that's what we want. I'm simply going to add some padding onto my group left to make sure that the elements inside of the group are not stuck to the sides of the group. So I'm going to set some left and right padding, and I'm also going to set some bottom and top padding. Let's say 48, 48, 48, just for now. We will maybe modify it later, depending on what we want. So the first part of that was the logo, which is basically a group with an SVG logo inside, then some text, and some text again. So let's start with that. I'm going to wrap them into a group that I'm going to call group top text. This group will be set to container layout colon. I'm going to set some spacing between elements, just so that I can create some space between elements. Thank you. But some sort of not clutter. All right. So this will be our group logo. That I'm going to set to a background style flat color, my primary color, which is primary 500. I'm going to add some roundness to it. Let's say 8. Yep, looks good. I'm going to center it. There we go. And now I'm going to set it to align to parent, because I'm simply going to add an image inside of it, which will be my logo. So let's say that my logo will be 30 pixels. And now I can simply go back into Figma and I'm going to export this logo. Up in my downloads, there we go. Now I can go and find the logo just here. Yeah, it's a bit blurry. I'm gonna export it in SVG. SVG, and that should do it. Right. So first we have our logo. Now we need to add obviously our title, which will be welcome back. And I'm going to use some style that I have in my app to set it to, for example, 23 pt black. Oops, that's crazy. Black bold. And I'm going to uncheck fit width to content, and I'm going to center my text. There we go. I think that's a little small. Let's see what size they used. Yeah, 37 inter semi-bold. I'm going to keep it to bold because I like it, but I'm going to simply put it to 37. That's right. And now, finally, we need the text, the two different texts. So one black here and one blue here. I'm going to use a single text, but I'm going to change the color of the second part, basically. So that's, if I take a look, 14 regular. I'm going to set it to 16, I think. So I'm going to duplicate this text. I'm simply going to modify the style. So 16 pt black regular. I'm going to say not have an account. Sign up here. Right. Right now we only have some black text. So I'm going to go into my rich text editor, sorry. I'm going to set a random color because I need to then set it up here. So that's my primary color on my app. And what I want to do is that I want the sign up here to become underlined when the user hover this text. So I'm going to add a conditional. I'm going to say that when this text is hovered, I'm going to modify the text because I don't want to select underline because this will underline the whole text, so the black part and the blue part as well. So I'm going to use the rich text editor once again, and I'm going to simply underline this part. And there we go. So now if we take a look at this first part, we can see that now when I hover the text, only the sign up here is getting underlined, which is what I want. So now that we have our text, we can move on to building the inputs. So we are going to add another group that will contain our inputs. So group inputs container. There we go. I've added some gap between the top text and the input container. And now I can go ahead and add a first group that will hold the input label, so the text above the input, and the input itself. So in the label, I'm going to say email. I'm going to set it to 14 pt and black medium, usually does well. I'm going to add an input in the same group, just below it. I'm going to rename it, so input login email, content format email. I'm going to remove the fixed width by default on the input. I'm going to set it to 40 pixels of height, usually does well. So there we go. What I like to do is simply to add some gap between the label, the text label, and the input itself. And I'm going also to rename the group itself. And now that we have the first one, we can simply duplicate it using Command D or Control D if you're on Windows. And there we go. And now I can rename it to password, and same for the input login password, and same for the group, input login password. There we go. I'm going to modify the placeholder. So let's say johndoe@gmail.com. and password. Let's say type your password. I'm going to modify the content format also for the input password. I'm going to set it to password. There we go. Now, what I can do is add some gap between the two groups here. So I'm going to set some gap, let's say 16 pixels. That should do. All right. And now what I can do is simply to add a button. I'm going to use a pre-made style that I have in my app. This button is going to say login. And I'm going to remove fixed width so that it expands and take the full width of the container it is in. All right, I'm going to make it last so that it's at the bottom of the group. There we go. Now, what we need to do is to make the forgot password button, the continue with Google button, and the term of service and privacy policy agreement. We are going to create another group for that because the spacing is a bit different. As you can see, we have 24 here, and into this we have 24 as well. 16 there and 24. So yeah, maybe we don't need another group actually. All right. So inside the group, I can actually copy this one because that's more or less the same thing that we are going to do for the forgot password. And I can simply modify the text. So let's say forgot password. I'm going to remove the space and click here. There we go. I'm going to select it and simply copy it to paste it here. And I'm going to add the underline on the click here. This is just to go a little bit faster. There we go. And I'm simply going to make it a bit smaller because I don't really like it. And I'm going to center it. There we go. Now we need to do our continue with Google button. We are not going to do it with a button from Bubble. We are going to use a group actually because we want to be able to import a custom SVG image and then the text next to it. So this is actually a group, but that doesn't change anything in terms of functionality. So I'm going to add a group. I'm going to put it in the main group. I'm going to say group login Google login. There we go. I'm going to set it to roundness of 6, which is the same roundness as this button. Background style, I'm going to set it to black. And I'm going to get the same parameters that I have in terms of padding, etc. On this button as well. So 24 padding left and right, and 12 top and bottom. This way, everything is coherent and consistent across the app. There we go. And now, since I want to have the Google logo and the text next to each other, I can go ahead and select a row, and I'm going to add some gap between the two of them, colon gap. I'm going to set it to 6. Now, I can add a text inside of my button, which will be continue with Google. I'm going to take the same size that I have here on my button, so 16 pixels and semi-bold and full white. So let's say 16 black semi-bold, and I'm simply going to set it to white. There we go. Now what I can do is add an image next to the continue with Google. I'm going to set it to the correct size, which should be 20 pixels, I think. If we take a look here, yeah, 16 actually. And I'm going to export this one in SVG, like we did earlier with the logo. Export Google SVG, there we go. And now I can take it and add it into my image. I'm going to set it to, let's say, 18. Now I simply need to center the element inside of this group. And there we go. We have our continue with Google button. And I'm just going to put the forgot password here. And all we need to do now for the login is the terms and privacy message. So what we can do is reuse once again this element, this text element, and I'm going to simply copy the message. So it's in several parts, but we are going to do it in a single text element in Bubble. So there we go. I'm going to remove this. I'm going to paste the first part, the second one. That's a bit tedious, but that's how the Figma is built. I'm going to select this as well. So, and privacy policy. I also agree to blah 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 blah. thankfully, we only have to do this once. Actually, that's a bit stupid because they put it in the login form. That's a bit strange. All we need to do now is to highlight the terms of service, and the privacy policy. I don't have a link to put this to put in them, but if you have a link to your own terms and condition or privacy policy, you can simply add a link here, and that will do the job. Now I simply have to modify the color, which is the primary color of my app, and that should do it. I'm not a huge fan of all the gap we have between these elements, so I'm going to select them and I'm going to group them in a column container just to make the gap a little bit smaller. And let's see, 16 pixels of gap. That's fine. So that's our login page, or login group. So if we take a look at the preview, I need to remove the debugger. We can see that it's not too bad. What we can do is add a maximum width, because right now it is a bit too stretched, in my opinion. It's not that disturbing, but I'd like to do it. So let's say that we want to add max width on our element. We can say 480, for example. 480 should do. And I'm going to center it horizontally so that it is at the center of the group left. So if we take a look at it, now it's all centered and it's a bit smaller than what we had earlier. So that's it for the login part. Now we can duplicate it and move on to the sign up part, where we'll just add the first name and the last name of the user. So back into Bubble, what we can do now is simply select our group login, hit Command plus D, or Control plus D if you're on Windows. I'm going to simply mask the login for now, and I'm going to rename it to sign up. And now all we need to do is to modify a bit the text. So welcome, not welcome back. We can say already have an account. We can say login. I'm going to remove the here. So as we did earlier, I'm going to copy this text and I'm going to paste it here. And I'm just going to add the underline when we overwrite into the condition. So that's basically it. I'm going to rename actually text the sign up. Forgot your password. In case of a sign up, it's not needed. Continue with Google, we can let it like this. And now all we need to do now is just to show is that we are going to add a first name and a last name inputs, just in case of a sign up. That's usually what we do. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to group them, the first name and the last name, next to each other, so that we have two inputs for the first name and the last name. That's usually how it's done in a sign up form. So I'm going to select them both, and I'm going to hit a row container, so group elements in a row container. So that will be group first plus last name. And I'm going to add some gap between them, which is 16 of row gap and 16 of column gap. Now, one thing we need to do that is pretty important is that we need to add some min widths on these two groups, because when the page will get narrow, they will become smaller, way smaller than the group that are alone on their row. So we need to make sure that below a certain point, they will go below each other, and we do that with a min width. So I'm going to set a min width to 200 pixels. I'm going to set the same for this one. And now we can see that everything is behaving correctly. So let's rename everything properly. So let's say first name, here last name, there we go. Now I need to rename the input, so that will be sign up first name. This is not an email, this is simply a text. I'm going to set in the placeholder John. I'm going to copy this one to go a little bit faster. So input sign up last name. The last name here will be Doe. I'm going to set it to text. And same for the inputs. We are going to rename it with sign up, because we are going to need them in the workflows later on. So it's important to name them correctly, because that will help us find them easily. I think that's it. Button sign up. There we go. We have continue with Google, which is sign up Google sign up. And I think we're good. So now what we can do is duplicate this one or the login because there are slightly less component, and we're going to do the reset password as well. So let's duplicate this one. I'm going to set it to the bottom, and this will be a reset PW. Going to mask login. So basically, I'm going to remove this. I'm going to remove the password element as well. And all we are going to modify here is the password forgotten. Enter your email, and we'll send you a new one. I'm going to remove the conditional on this one because it's not needed anymore. All right, and now I can rename this button reset password, and I can rename the input as well. Input reset PW email. There we go. So now we have our password forgotten, our reset PW, our login, and our sign up. So if we take a look at our preview, oops, it's refreshing. We can see that now we can see the three groups on the same page, which is obviously not what we want. So next step, we are going to build the navigation flow so that when we click on sign up here, this will take us to the sign up group. Same for the login, this will take us to the login, and for the password forgotten, this will go to the password forgotten group. And we are going to do this using URL parameters so that we can stay on the same page and not reload the page, so that it's instant. There is no load time, and also that we can send the user to a specific page from outside our app. Back into Bubble, what we are going to do is that we are going to make each element not visible on page load by default. So we are going to uncheck visible on page load, and we also will make sure that collapse when hidden is checked. This way they don't take any space where they are hidden. So let's do the same for each element. Visible on page load, no. And same for the reset password, visible on page load, no. Right, so now we need to choose which of this one will be visible by default when we arrive on the page. So basically we are going to use URL parameters to navigate between the pages. So how does it work? Simply we are going to, on our text, add a little overflow that will execute the action go to page. Go to page. In this go to page, we can first select the page, which is the login, the page we are on actually, and we can use this option, which is called send more parameters to the page. So a URL parameter basically is what we can see here in the Bubble editor, or more importantly in almost any URLs on the web. It's a pair of a key, which is the name of the parameters, and a value. So we can see here that we have a parameter ID with a value of Nocodable-tuto. We can have a parameter tab, which is design, another parameter name, which is login, etc., etc. And this value that we store in the URL of a page, we can use it to perform action or execute conditionals on this. And that's what we are going to do. We are going to use a parameter that we are going to call whatever. And when the parameter is set to login, we are going to display the group login. When it is set to sign up, we are going to display the group sign up. And when it is set to reset PW, we are going to display the group reset PW. So let's add another parameter that we are going to send when we go to page in this action. Parameter, I'm going to call it M for mode. And simply I'm going to, since I click on don't have an account sign up, I'm going to set it to sign up. There we go. There we go. I need to do the same on each of the group. So this was the group login. Actually, I need to do this as well. Forgot your password. I need to go to reset password. So same, I'm going to add an action, add a workflow. I'm going to add an action, go to page. The page will be login. Send more parameter to the page. M equal reset PW. There we go. And now what I need to do is to do the sign up. So when I click on login, I'm going to add a new workflow, go to page index, and I'm going to add a parameter, M equal login. There we go. actually, I realized I made a small mistake just earlier on the go to page login. We are not going to go to page index, we are going to go to page login. So I'm just going to check that I didn't make this mistake anywhere else. So login and login. Great. There we go. So if we take a look at our page, I'm just going to set the group login to be visible by default. We will modify this later. So if we take a look at our page, I need to refresh it. I'm going to need to see the URL. Currently, we're on the login/login, so we don't have any URL parameters. Otherwise, we will have an interrogation mark and then the parameters. So if we click on sign up here, this will take us to login m equals sign up. So this is our parameter. So here the parameters is m equals sign up. This did not update anything else currently because we didn't set a conditional on our groups. So that's what we are going to do right now. So what I want to do is that when m equals sign up, I want to show the group sign up. When m equals login, I want to show the group login, and same for reset password. So let's do that in Bubble. So I'm going to select the group login. I'm going to add a conditional, and I'm going to use the operator get data from page URL. In this get data from page URL, we can type the parameter name that we are looking for. In this case, my parameter, I named it m, maybe you named it mod, tab, whatever. And I'm going to say that when get m from page URL is login, then I want to make the element visible. There we go. Just so you remember, we unchecked visible on page load. So now I can simply copy this condition, go on the group sign up, I can paste this condition and replace it with sign up. And same for the reset password. And this time this will be reset PW. There we go. So now, if we take a look at our preview, currently the URL is m equal login. So the URL parameter is m equal login. If I click on sign up here, we can see that now I'm on the sign up page. And if I go back to login and I click on forgot my password, I am on the password forgotten page. So our navigation system is working. If we type login in this page, we can see that now we are here. The only thing we need to correct right now is that if I come up on the page login without any URL parameters, no screen will show up. So what we need to do is to select one of the group, whether login or sign up, the one you want, and add this to the condition or get m from page URL is empty. This way, when there will be no m parameter on in the URL of the page, this one will be visible. So if I take a look at this now, so we can see that no URL parameter. If I refresh, now I have my login form, so that's working pretty fine. Right, one more thing we can do now is to make sure that this page is responsive before working on the right part. If I take a look at my page right now and that I try to make it narrower, to shrink it, we can see that nothing happens and the page breaks because the elements are now too small. The page is too small and the elements are not reacting to it. In this case, what we can do, and what is usually done on login page with this type of structure, is to simply hide the group on the right. So how do we do that? You can check in the responsive tab and make the screen smaller, and we can see that now the screen is a bit too small, so you can choose when you want to hide it. And I'm going to select the group right, and I'm going to add a condition on it that will say when current page width, is less than or equal to, usually I like to use 992, which is the breakpoint for tablet, the default breakpoint on Bubble. And I'm going to make this element visible, and I'm going to uncheck it. And as we can see, the element on the right disappeared, and the group is now has more space to behave. What we can see here, however, is that we have a lot of padding on the right, which is not really useful in this case, especially on the smaller screen. So I'm going to go on the group left, which is the group on which we set 48 of padding earlier, and I'm going to add a condition, current page width less than or equal to 992, and I'm going to modify the padding left and the padding right, and I'm going to set it to, let's say, 20 and 20, and I can even modify the padding at the top, which is not, in this case, needed, but let's set it to, for example, 24. And now my page is behaving correctly. You can see that now I'm in a 300 pixel, which is very small. Usually you would use responsive up to 380, which is fine. And you can see that it's behaving perfectly. And if I make the page bigger again, you can see that my group is now reappearing again. So our page is responsive. All we need to do now is to take care of the right of the page. So the testimonial, and there is also a background, I think, in this case. Yep. So this background. All we need to do is to take care of this part, which will be pretty fast, and then we're good to go. So back to Bubble, I'm going to first set our image background. So I've downloaded it, so background 2. There we go, so now we have a background, and I'm going to set our group to align to parent, just so I can center the group a little bit easier. More easily, sorry. So I'm going to add a group, which will be the group that will contain our testimonial. Oops, sorry. So I'm going to center it, and I'm going to check the max width of this group, which is 512. So I'm going to add some max width to my group, 512. And I'm also going to add some padding left and right on this group, just so we keep clear of the border of the group. Otherwise, it's not really beautiful. So I'm going to call it group testimonial container. This one will be colon, and I'm going to add a gap between each element, knowing that the first element is the testimonial itself. So I'm going to copy it. There we go, and we can see that it is medium 30 pixels and it is in white. So I'm going to paste this. I'm going to set it to, so I have medium, so I'm going to set it to 30 pixels and to white. There we go. Was it in italic? No. And now I can simply add the picture of the reviewer. So I'm going to export it to SVG as well. Image. And I'm going to also create a group with her name and her job title. So inside our group testimonial, we are going to add another group. There we go. Whoops, sorry, not what I wanted to do. I'm going to put it on top. That will be our group reviewer. Layout, since the picture and the information of the reviewer are set next to each other, I'm going to set it to row, and I'm going to apply a gap of 8 pixels, for example. And I'm going to add an image, which will be the profile picture. I'm going to keep the element aspect ratio, so 1 by 1, so that's a square or a circle. I'm going to set it to maybe, let's say 32 pixels. I'm going to make it round, so 999. There we go. And now I can upload the image. Whoa, it's not centered. Okay. There we go. And now what I can do is add another group next to the reviewer profile picture, which will be the name plus the job title, which will be a colon because they are on top of each other. I'm going to center this one vertically. And now I can add my first text and get the size. So that's medium 16 white. So 16 petit black medium, and I'm going to set it to white. Let's color Jane Doe. There we go. And just under that, I'm going to paste our job title, which is written in 14 pixel regular white. So Chief Data Officer. And 14 pixels in regular. There we go. Probably we can resize a bit the picture, which is 48 by 48. And there we go, much better. And then we can align this vertically at the middle, and probably add some gap between the testimonial and this. And there we go, we're not too bad. What we can do now is that we need to add the quote icon, which is this, which is basically an image in this case. That's actually a text, but I can export it to an image, I think. Probably, yep. Well, we're gonna use an icon. So basically what we want to do is to group the quote and the testimonial group into one group, and then we'll have some negative margin on the quote icon to make it go out its bound out of the container. So how do we do that? I'm going to select my testimonial container and I'm going to group it into an align to parent container. So that will be quote plus testimonial. And actually I'm going to set the max width on this group rather than the other one. So this one I'm going to set it to up to 512. So this is centered, and now what I can do is to add an icon. We're going to select a library. Usually I like phosphor. They're quite nice. I'm going to select let's say fill. And I'm going to remove the default padding that there is on icon. There we go. I'm going to probably make it bigger. Let's say 48 by 48. And I'm going to put it in white. There we go, we can see it here. And probably decrease the opacity, let's say 60 pixels. That's not too bad. I'm going to make it even bigger. 64. And now what I can do is simply add some negative margin, let's say 24, to make it go outside of the group. Probably more, 48. Let's try 32, sorry. And there we go. That's more or less that. So if we take a look at our page now, we can see that we have our login page fully functional with several tabs, and that we did that responsively. So the page will behave correctly both on mobile and on desktop. And there you go. I hope you liked this tutorial and that it was useful for you. If it is, don't forget to subscribe and to like this video. And if you don't want to spend time doing this, or if you simply want to go faster, don't forget to check the link in the description to Nocodable Components UI library. It's a really useful resource and I'm sure you will like it. See you!